A group of World Trade Organization (WTO) members have finalized their negotiations of a new international trade agreement, the Investment Facilitation for Development Agreement, or IFDA. Although there is still an open question about how and whether the treaty will be incorporated into the WTO rulebook, it is now more important than ever to understand what this agreement is about, as well as the broader policy context. Unlike the WTO's usual multilateral agreements, this new treaty is a plurilateral agreement, which means that only some WTO members will be bound by its rules. So far, a full 3/4 of the membership have endorsed the negotiations of these rules. So what's been the driving force behind this effort? By signing on to the agreement, governments promise to carry out important reforms of their regulatory and administrative frameworks for governing foreign direct investment, or FDI. They expect these reforms will improve domestic conditions, which will boost global FDI flows, especially to developing and least developed countries. So what's included in the agreement? In terms of scope, the new agreement focuses on investment facilitation rules. These rules focus on improving how investment measures are developed, communicated, and administered. It does not cover market access, investment protection, or investor-state dispute settlement rules. Further, the rules only apply to investment measures that target FDI. Financial investments, such as portfolio investments, are not affected. The rules cover 4 main areas: improving the transparency of investment measures, simplifying administrative procedures, strengthening cooperation among governments and investors on investment facilitation, and finally, encouraging the flow of sustainable investments. The first area, the rules on transparency of investment measures, mainly focuses on improving access to government information. Governments must publish information on regulations and other practical information useful for FDI decisions. The information must be made available online, ideally via a single information platform. Governments must also improve transparency around how regulatory measures are developed, such as by giving stakeholders the opportunity to provide comments while developing new laws or regulations on FDI. The second key area is streamlining and speeding up administrative procedures. The focus here is to reduce bureaucratic impediments to FDI. When governments develop new administrative measures on FDI, they must do so reasonably, objectively, and impartially. Governments also agreed to make their authorization procedures for foreign investments more reliable and effective. For example, they must provide updates on the status of applications, as well as carry out efforts to accept electronic submissions. Finally, governments commit to carrying out authorization decisions independently and by giving investors access to appeal and review mechanisms. The third key area focuses on enhancing cooperation, not only among governments, but also with investors. Governments must assign focal points who can respond to questions on the agreement. They also agree that the authorities will collaborate on cross-border issues. To strengthen the link between investors and the local economy, the governments are expected to set up databases with useful information on local suppliers, as well as develop capacity-building programs to improve the local suppliers' ability to better meet foreign investor needs. The final substantive section of the agreement is on sustainable investment. This should help governments attract investments that deliver sustainable development objectives. The states have committed to encouraging foreign businesses in their territories to observe international standards and principles on responsible business conduct. They also agree to develop relevant anti-corruption and anti-money laundering policies. While these articles are important for sustainability, many more ideas were discussed that didn't make it into this treaty. Importantly, the section has also been excluded from dispute settlement proceedings, which means that there are no legal consequences if the sustainability provisions aren't met. The agreement also includes a special and differential treatment section, which replicates the approach from the Agreement on Trade Facilitation. It recognizes that developing and least developed countries may not be able to implement some of the rules immediately. Instead, these countries can determine for themselves which rules would apply immediately, which rules would only apply after a longer timeline, and which rules require time and capacity building funds. Donor countries are expected to facilitate such funds on mutually agreed terms. The full WTO membership is now considering whether to incorporate the agreement into the WTO framework. If they all agree, then the IFDA could become a formal WTO agreement. Governments will need to make a final decision about whether to join the agreement formally. Its rules will only apply to those governments that join and ratify the text. As governments make these decisions, it's useful to understand the broader policy context. This is because the agreement is only one element of a broader policy shift, as countries are also increasingly negotiating these investment facilitation provisions in their investment treaties.
Investment facilitation rules are more often negotiated through international investment agreements between states. And even here, the topic is relatively new. Since 2015, when Brazil developed a bilateral investment treaty model dedicated to facilitation, investment facilitation has become more common in investment treaties. Brazil's aim was to pioneer a model based on cooperation instead of investment protection and dispute settlement, which had dominated treaties until then. A lot of experimentation is now taking place, with countries at different income levels agreeing to diverse commitments in this area. It is important to keep an eye on this experimentation, given that many questions about the effects of investment facilitation remain unanswered. First, it is important to note that international investment facilitation obligations are likely to be challenging to implement for many countries, as they will require significant whole-of-government efforts to reform domestic legal frameworks to align with international obligations. Second, investment treaties could also include more ambitious investment facilitation rules on development and sustainability. Very few investment facilitation agreements specifically address sustainable investment or support for the local economy. There's an opportunity across investment agreements to strengthen commitments on the sustainability of investments by both home and host states. Third, another reason to remember the broader investment treaty regime is to address the risks relating to the controversial investor-state dispute settlement regime, known as ISDS. ISDS is important because if a government is found to have breached an obligation in an investment treaty, it can end up being liable for large amounts of money in compensation to an investor. In the last decade, damages awards in ISDS amounted to over $300 million on average. The IFDA includes an important firewall provision to mitigate the risk that investors can sue states through ISDS, arguing that failure to implement an IFDA provision means that the government failed to deliver on broader investment treaty promises. The firewall provision does not completely eliminate this risk, however. Governments implementing the IFDA should take the opportunity to review their investment treaty portfolio and reform old problematic treaties. As governments consider joining or implementing the IFDA, it's important that they look at their investment facilitation commitments holistically. The regulation of foreign investment includes not only treaties, but also national laws and contracts. The interaction between these levels is crucial for delivering reform. While there's a clear need for more investment to achieve sustainable development goals, countries must ensure that their legal and policy frameworks foster high-quality, sustainable investment and do not undermine it. We at IISD remain ready to help developing and least developed countries in any way we can as they navigate their approach to investment facilitation. IISD's annual investment policy forums are a great occasion for investment policymakers to engage in the debate about how to make international investment governance work for sustainable development. Finally, if you want to learn more about the Investment Facilitation Agreement, please check out our Reader's Guide.